This is a demo of ToroAdmin. ToroAdmin is the tool that is used to set up the ToroCube. So before you deploy ToroCube, before you start using it, you need to set it up. And here's where the magic happens. So you create a new file, basically file new or load. So you open or create a new file, and then what happens is this you probably don't want to touch. This just tells you where some of the dependent files are located for Toro Viewer. So unless you have your own website, CDN, do not touch this. But when you send out a Toro Viewer, for example, it gets your branding, it gets your company name at the top, it gets your logo. So here's where you can type in your company name. You can, if you want to match some colors, you can change the colors to get it so that when the Toro Viewer is generated, it's got your company name at the top. You would upload a file here, whatever your logo file is. If you wish to, you can leave it blank. And what happens is, for the more technical people watching this, this logo file is converted to base 64 string and embedded into the Toro Viewer file. To set up ToroCube, you need to connect to database. Even if you want to run it locally, you need the data. And so whether you run it locally, you run it on a server, you need to connect to a database. So this is basically me connecting to a database. These are the credentials. In my case, I'm saying it's integrated security, so I don't need username or password. And then there's a whole bunch of options. So I'm going to jump back and forth, but try to cover all of it. So first, languages. So Toro Viewer, ToroCube in the sense, comes with two language packs, English and French. So I have to speak English here, then it says, okay, if you see the video for saving reports and publishing reports, you'll see that the options that appear on your drop down are called My Reports and Published Reports. You can change those. You can call it something else if you want. And in French, obviously, it'd be something else. It'd be the French equivalent. In terms of language packs, pretty much any language, it just requires translation. So we could probably add any language pack we want to in ToroCube. Anyways, so one of the things, if you've seen the ToroCube demo videos, you'll see that in some charts you can pick the top 5, top 4, top N basically, and this is where you allow or disallow it. So you control whether those options appear or do not appear. Diagnostic mode. Diagnostic mode, I probably won't go into in this video, but diagnostic mode is when you're troubleshooting something, or you want to. So each chart that you see is basically the configuration of the chart is a. Again, I'm going to use technical terms, but it's a JSON object, a JSON array. And in diagnostic mode, you can actually look at the JSON array or load a JSON array and see what the chart looks like. This is really for the power users. Most people would not want to run it in diagnostic mode, even for testing purposes. Running minimize and disable cube are two separate options. If you just want to show a chart and not have the configuration panel, the data panel, the drop downs, and you want to run it in a sense where you already have the configuration of the JSON for the chart and want to show a chart on the screen, like maybe you have 4 charts laid out or 5 charts laid out, whatever the case may be, and not have all that interface that allows you to modify things, you would say disable cube, and then you could load those charts. Run minimize is somewhat similar. So if you're going to embed the chart in some other system, or let's say you have a report that you generate a PDF in your website, generates a PDF, and you want to embed a chart in there, you can do that by running it minimized and then feeding it that the JSON that creates the chart. Canvas width, canvas height, 100% we said. You can also change it to pixels and pick pixels, but I prefer to leave it in percentage because you don't know what screen you're going to end up with. Read only. Well, if it's read only, then you can't really change a lot of the options. So you don't want to do read only unless you absolutely have to. Overlapping dims. If you saw some of the videos for ToroCube, you will see that there were some dimensions that have multiple values, like products that were listed for an adverse event case, or reaction or indication. So this configures ToroCube to expect that you will have some dimensions that are that way. Execute reports on server. And if you pick server, in our case for the demo, we had local. So what it does when you do local is it extracts the data from the server and it creates a dimensions file, or basically creates the dimensions, a big JSON array that is used and it's parsed or processed on the browser itself. If I were to run it on the server, and then I have option, it runs on SQL Server and Oracle, and we're working on MySQL. But if you run it on SQL Server, then the benefit is that SQL Server and Oracle databases are workhorses. I mean, you can deal with hundreds of thousands of rows, millions of records, and get back results pretty fast. And all the consolidation, all the processing, all of that is done on the server, and then the server just sends you the pre-configured data to display. Now let's come in. So basically, when I speak English, it also asks me to pick a table or a view from my database, which contains the data. So you could have multiple different tables for different languages, and depending on what you're doing. Dimension. So once I pick a table, all the columns will show up here. I have obviously taken care of all those columns and put them in here. So when you look at it, this capital case underscore ID is the column name of in the table in the database, but I've called it nicely formatted to case ID, so it doesn't have to be the same. And here, let's look at this, and then let me edit it. So once you pick a column, it asks you to put a column description, so you can put in a more user-friendly, or at least visually easier on the eyes, I guess, case outcome as opposed to case underscore outcome, all capital. There's some icons here next to the column names, and let me show you what these are. So brand name, product, generic name, and reaction. I think it's easy to speculate what these icons mean, but basically I've checked and said column contains multiple values. So this is our instance where those columns have, there could be more than one product in the same case. There could be more than one indication or more than one reaction in the same case. So this is where I sort of configure it. This, on the other hand, has a different icon. And if I do this here, it tells you reporting purposes only. So what that tells ToroCube is that case ID will never be a dimension. Case version will never be a dimension. We don't want it to be a dimension where user can, each case ID is unique. So there's no point in plotting something that is unique. You can't aggregate it. You can't really do any charting with it. So these two columns in our data set are for reporting purposes only. And this is where we've identified it, so that when ToroCube runs, all of these other columns besides these two will show up as dimensions. These two will not, because they're for reporting purposes only. Now, if you saw the filtering video on filtering, you also saw that there were some dimensions, like the product authorization country, in fact, they're right here, product authorization country, reporter country, that are sort of mutually exclusive, so that you can either filter on A or you can filter on the B dimension. You can't filter on both of them together. And this is where you set them up, and you kind of pick and say these two are mutually exclusive, and then bring them here. So I have two here, but I could have 3, 4 columns, and they'd all be mutually exclusive. I'd have to pick between them to filter. Venable. So the Venn diagram, if you recall the Venn diagram, so this goes back to which columns do you want to show in your Venn diagram. And you can pick them here, and we pick these 3: product brand name, product generic name, reaction, Medra, PT. But I can pick others and bring them in and say add. I don't want to, but I could. Radar chart, same thing, because if you look at the video for the radar charts, you really want to pick dimensions that have more than 2 values, preferably more than 3 values. Because if it has 2 values, like yes and no, or male and female, it'll be a straight line in a radar chart, and serves no purpose. You really want something that has multiple values and gives it a shape. So we picked these two, case outcome and patient age group. And if you go to radar chart, you will see that only these two dimensions are available. Ranges. This is where we define ranges. So in this case, I don't know how easy it is to read. Let me just add something else, which I don't mean to, but I just want to show this one. So days case open. It's again difficult to read, sorry. Yeah, better. So days open is, case open is a number. So if you look at the filtering video, you will see that it's defined as a range, and this is where we do it. And therefore you can say greater days case, when you're filtering, you can say days case open greater than, equal to, less than, between two numbers, and so on. So that's because it's defined here. Now I'm going to get rid of case expectedness because it's clearly not a range. Yes, okay, gone. This is where you define what the facts are. The facts are the measures. So if you, majority of the charts are for adverse event cases. So there's only one measure, and this is case. I don't know if it's easy to read or not, but this is cases. And for the bubble chart and the scatter chart, I had actually three facts, or three measures. I think it was like sales, expenses, and estimates. So this is where you define what your measures are, and then you can also pick a format. So if it could be, in my case, I picked format as number, and I said precision is 0. So I don't know if you can see it here. Let me throw one more in. Again, I don't want to throw it in, but I'm just doing it so it's easy to read. So something else gets the blue highlight, and then you can see that this is cases. This is cases. That's a numerical measure. It's number. It's listed as a number. Oops, not coming to that. And it's a precision of 0. But you can pick something and have it as a number, dollars, pounds, euros, Indian rupees, percent, or custom. And custom is more like an Excel custom formatting. And then you can pick the precision of display. Let's remove this. We never. Okay. Graph type. So graph type is where you would actually come and say which graphs you want to appear. So not all, depending on your data, not all graphs apply. For example, in the case of if you go to the interactive demo site, you will see that the scatter chart and the bubble chart is missing. It hasn't been applied. And the reason for that is because I don't have, in the adverse event case scenario, I don't have two measures, numerical measures, or three numerical measures to have those charts in any meaningful way. So here you can pick the charts, and so let me just do this, maybe delete it, and then we'll do this again. So for example, in my geomaps, I may decide to say, okay, you know what, I also want average of data. So I want to show, for whatever reason, I mean, this doesn't apply to adverse event, but let's say I have some kind of a number where if I show it on the map, I'm going to show the sums, and then I also want an option for the user to show averages. So I can add this, and then it will. So when I pick geomaps, I will get yet another drop down in my Toro cube that will allow me to pick either the sum or the average. There are situations where this is useful. It wouldn't be useful from my perspective in the adverse event case scenario. And you can pick some for depending on the average, minimum, maximum, depending on the kind of graph you're working on. The next tab is geography, and here a few things to keep in mind. Starting map. You can pick what your starting map is. For our scenario, we pick the starting map to be the world, and then we allowed the drill down into these two countries. I mean, when you do that, you still need the data behind it, or there will be no drill down. If you recall, if you looked at the GeoMap demo, it had two dimensions, and the first dimension did not have any drill down, and the second one did. So if you look at here, we pick the column containing countries and column containing states. In the case of product authorization, we only have one, and this is the one that contains the country, nothing for the state really. And when you look at the reporter, I picked two columns. I picked a column here called reporter country for column containing countries, and a column containing states. I picked reporter state, and I populated this and added it, and this one came with two columns. It's in blue right now, and this one that's in blue right now came with only one column. So this is where I define the geography and which columns should show up in the GeoMap graph. Dependency, I'm not going to go into dependencies, not complex, but it's just we did not, for the purpose of the demo, we did not go into dependency because I thought it would just lend more complications, and I didn't want to confuse anyone. But the idea of dependency is that when you're looking at dimensions, and um, if you select a given dimension, then you can see further subdimensions. Kind of like if you have countries, then you can pick from states, but there's no point in picking from states if you haven't picked the country. So you can have parent-child relationship between two dimensions to do that. Let's go to time. For time, this is where you identify basically any columns, any dimensions that are time related. Because once again, if you've seen the filtering video, you will see that if if a dimension is time or date, basically, then the way you filter is different, right? You can pick custom range of dates. You can say last 7 days, last month, last year, current month, current year, all of those. So to know, for ToroCube to know which dimension to show that with, which dimension to treat as a date, here's where we select the dimension and say, okay, for the FDA notification date, for the event date. So this is where we would do it. I don't know why this pop-up comes. I think it's my machine's running out of memory, and this is from my Excel. Sorry, it's gone. Good. And if you have a license for ToroCube Pharma, then you would also see this. This is saying use with the DPRR report, because the dynamic PRR report plots your PRR, proportionality reporting ratio, against a date, and we need to know which date it is. Is it the event date? Is it the FDA notification date? So this is where you would pick the dimension that your dynamic PRR report would use to plot. This only applies to ToroCube Pharma. And again, if you think about the filtering demo, the video with filtering, you'd see that in the date there is options like current week or last week, and we talked about how weeks are determined. So most places, I think, a week would run from Monday through Sunday, but in some parts of the world it would go from Saturday to Friday, and this is where you say you pick your first day of the week, so the calculation can happen, and when you say show me the current week, it picks the appropriate range of days. Reporting. So this is where, remember we talked about confirmation report, and I think it's either in the multidimensional grid or the multidimensional matrix that I actually downloaded a confirmation report. So this is where we would say what goes in a confirmation report. So of all the columns available to us, we would pick some and bring it here, right? So we would move from here to here, and we would say, okay, I want case ID, I want case version, case expectedness. And now these two are not part of dimensions anyway, so they will only be in report. But the rest of these are dimensions too, I guess. But they can also show up in the report. And I chose not to put these in there because reporter language, you can use the dimension perhaps, but probably serves no value in a report where you're just saying, hey, which case is the one that I need to look at because it's the underlying case for this analysis. Same thing with the reporter state. Didn't see the value, days case open, or cases. Cases are numerical measure, right? It's like, it's always one in this case because there's only one case that is, like it. It's unique. And if you have ToroCube Pharma, you'll also see this tab called Signal Analysis. And Signal Analysis is the one where, because we're often plotting products against reactions, it needs to know which dimension contains products, or at least things that we would plot as products, like active ingredient is not exactly a product, but this is something where you would do it. So I have two here, but the three I would generally use in a production environment would be the brand name, the generic name, and the active ingredient. Similarly, this is the dimension for reactions. So here we have PT, but again, in a production setting, I would have all 5 MEDRA hierarchies here. Select the dimension for outcome. In one of the reports, we're showing, I think it's a DPR, is the disproportionate analysis report, where we're showing the case outcome for fatal. We're showing number of fatal cases. And to know where to pick up the number of fatal cases from, we need to know which dimension contains that. And it's the one that's case outcome. And finally, this is where the administrator decides for the signal analysis reports, the signal detection reports, with all the calculations, what level of precision to show these calculated numbers with. And we picked 4. That pretty much, there's a lot. There's a lot in ToroAdmin, and there's a lot of configuration or permutations of things you can do, how to set it up. It is, but if you want to, if we design a system that's very configurable, that is, it can suit many needs, and part of that is that you need to set it up the right way. Certainly willing to help you set it up. This isn't something that you're walking down the path by yourself on. If I want to test, I can say generate dimensions, and it would go and get the data from the database and generate a dimensions file that I can see. And when I click on generate JSON files, this is when the files to be generated. When I'm ready, I'm done. I will create generate JSON files, and we'll create those files. There'll be a few files that I would take, and I would give it to the webmaster, whoever's deploying ToroCube, and these files would be part of the ToroCube install on your web server, and these files would basically configure your ToroCube to behave in the way you have set it up to behave using ToroAdmin. If I want to kind of troubleshoot something, I want to see what my configuration looks like, and again, this is something that would be for power users or troubleshooting. I could do this, and this would generate the JSON that I can look at. And I don't expect many people to figure it out and kind of go, oh, I know what this means. It is just a lot of data. This is the logo image. So this is the logo image we uploaded, converted to text, converted to a string, a base 64 string. Anyways, quite a large chunk of text for the image. And then the reports, the kind of graphs we chose and everything. So this is the configuration file. That is it for now for the ToroAdmin. The ToroAdmin is a vast subject, I guess, but this should suffice for now in terms of familiarity. Thank you for watching.